You wake up exhausted. You sleep 8 hours and get up more tired than when you went to bed.
You run all the tests, blood work, hormones, and imaging, and the doctors tell you that you're perfectly healthy.
But you know you're not. Something is draining your energy without you being able to identify it.
That weight on your chest during the night, that anxiety that comes out of nowhere, that fear of sleeping that you can't explain to anyone. Bruises appear on your body without any physical cause. Foul odors show up and disappear with no identifiable source. And conventional medicine finds absolutely nothing because it's looking in the wrong dimension. What they taught you about the nature of reality left out precisely what could explain your suffering.
When we observe the universe around us, from the most distant galaxies to the smallest living cell, we find something that should deeply disturb us, an ordered complexity that defies any purely material explanation. Think about this for a moment. Every living organism, no matter how simple it seems, reveals an intricate architecture where millions of parts work in perfect harmony. Our own body contains trillions of cells working in absolute synchrony. Each of these cells carries out thousands of chemical reactions per second, all coordinated with a precision that's impossible to replicate in any human laboratory. No factory has ever achieved this level of organization, and yet it happens inside us every second, without us having to think about it. Modern science tirelessly investigates this organizing principle. It searches in genes, in proteins, and in chemical reactions. It maps, catalogs, and analyzes. Increasingly powerful microscopes reveal increasingly smaller structures, but there's something it doesn't realize. It's looking in the wrong place. The principle that coordinates all this complexity doesn't belong to the physical plane. It can't be found by dissecting tissues or sequencing DNA. This struck me deeply when I started investigating. Atoms by themselves don't possess, in their inherent nature, the capacity to spontaneously arrange themselves into the elaborate patterns of living tissues. Carbon is carbon. Hydrogen is hydrogen. Oxygen remains oxygen whether it's in a rock or in a human brain. What drives them to form such magnificently organized structures? Something deeper guides them. Something that operates in a phase of manifestation completely different from what our five senses pick up. The structuring forces of the cosmos work through dimensions beyond the three spatial ones we know. Width, height, and depth are just the visible surface of something much larger. There's a parallel reality, an invisible structure upon which the physical world rests like a building on its foundations. This reality is accessible only through states of consciousness that transcend our everyday perception. And we live immersed in these invisible forces like fish swim in the ocean. Strange, isn't it? A fish has no awareness of water. It's so present, so constant, that it becomes invisible to him. We ask the fish where the ocean is, and he doesn't understand the question. We do the same thing with the forces that sustain our reality. We move among them every day. We're profoundly affected by them. Our moods change, our energy fluctuates, and our thoughts seem to arise out of nowhere. And yet, we rarely notice the existence of these subtle influences. Forms and entities inhabit this subtle world, not as fantasies or poetic metaphors, but as inhabitants of a plane as real as ours, just composed of a different substance. Just as there are creatures in the ocean depths that we never see, there are beings in dimensions that our eyes can't reach. Some people develop the ability to consciously penetrate this realm. They're like divers who explore the ocean depths while the rest of us stay on the surface, completely unaware of what exists below. These individuals, through training or natural gift, manage to cross the veil that separates the worlds. I spent days thinking about this after understanding the implications. If there's an invisible world around us, populated by forces and consciousnesses that affect us without our knowing, then much of what we consider reality is just a tiny fraction of the complete picture. Our science, our medicine, and our psychology all operate as if the physical plane were everything that exists, as if we could understand the ocean by studying only the foam of the waves. This limitation has serious consequences. Under certain circumstances, these invisible forces can break through into our reality. Like waters bursting through dams, they engulf us without warning. And when this happens, we don't have the vocabulary to describe the experience. We don't have the tools to deal with it. Medicine offers diagnoses that don't fit. Psychology proposes explanations that don't satisfy. We end up lost between two worlds, fully belonging to neither. What does this mean for you? It means that the universe isn't what they taught us. It means that we are multidimensional beings living in a multidimensional cosmos, but operating as if only one dimension existed. It means that many of the sufferings we consider unexplainable, those that medicine can't diagnose, that psychology can't treat, that seem to arise from nowhere and resist any conventional intervention, may have origins in planes that we simply aren't equipped to perceive. Human beings have a fundamentally spiritual nature. The mind and body are merely outer garments of this deeper essence. And until we understand this, until we accept that there's more in heaven and earth than our materialistic philosophy dreams of, we'll remain vulnerable to forces we don't even recognize as real. This is the foundation we need to establish before moving forward. Because what comes next, psychic attacks, their origins, their symptoms, and their objective physical manifestations, only make sense when we accept that reality has layers our eyes don't see and our instruments don't measure. Layers that, under certain circumstances, can profoundly affect our existence. Our natural inability to perceive subtle forces isn't a flaw, it's a protection. Think about a newborn. His eyes don't focus properly yet, and his ears don't distinguish sounds clearly. Nature protects him from too many stimuli while his nervous system matures. Something similar happens with our perception of the invisible. The barrier that separates us from these dimensions exists for a reason. It allows us to function in the physical world without being constantly bombarded by influences we don't know how to process. But this barrier can be broken. There are 4 specific situations that tear the veil between worlds and bring us face to face with forces that normally remain hidden. Knowing these doorways is the first step to protecting ourselves or to understanding what may have happened to us. The first doorway opens when we visit places where these forces concentrate in high intensity. Certain places accumulate energy in a way that's similar to how a capacitor stores electricity. Ancient temples, sites of great historical suffering, and houses where traumatic events occurred repeatedly. The energy doesn't simply dissipate just because time has passed. It remains layered and waiting. This explains why some people feel chills when entering certain rooms, why certain houses can never keep residents for very long, why apparently normal places cause unexplainable unease. The second doorway opens when we encounter people who consciously manipulate these forces. This can happen for beneficial purposes, healers, spiritual masters, and genuine energy therapists. But it can also happen with individuals who use this knowledge in unscrupulous ways. Simply making contact with someone who operates at these frequencies can open our perception in ways we didn't anticipate. I'll admit this disturbed me when I started understanding the implications. The third doorway appears when we ourselves actively seek contact with the invisible. Driven by curiosity, spiritual interest, or a desire for personal development, many people begin exploring meditative practices, rituals, and techniques for expanding consciousness. The problem isn't with the search itself. The problem is losing emotional stability before adequately understanding where we're stepping. It's like learning to swim in deep water without ever having practiced in the shallow end. The fourth doorway opens involuntarily through certain pathological states: prolonged high fever, extreme sleep deprivation, use of substances that alter brain chemistry, and severe psychological traumas. Any condition that weakens the body's natural defenses can simultaneously weaken the barrier that protects us from the invisible. Here's the crucial point we need to understand. The threshold of the invisible resembles a treacherous beach for swimming. Deep holes where the bottom suddenly disappears. Hidden currents that drag the swimmer away from shore. Quicksand that traps the feet of those who don't know the terrain. The experienced swimmer, who knows that stretch of coastline, can venture in with relative safety. But the inexperienced swimmer who ignores advice and follows only his impulses risks paying for his recklessness with his own life. But it would be a serious mistake to assume that these invisible forces are inherently malign. Stop and think about this. They're no more harmful in themselves than water or fire, powerful elements that sustain life, but that become dangerous only when we face them inappropriately. Water kills the reckless swimmer, but it gives life to all beings. Fire destroys houses, but it also warms homes and cooks food. The forces of the invisible follow the same logic. The real danger arises when unscrupulous individuals corrupt and pervert these energies for selfish purposes. In initiatic circles, these people are known as adepts of the left-hand path. They are those who discovered how to manipulate subtle forces but chose to use them for domination, revenge, or personal gain at the expense of others. It's fair to say, without exaggeration, that the invisible only becomes genuinely malign and harmful to humanity when it has been corrupted by the activities of these shadowy practitioners. What we find in nature, in its pure state, carries no intention to harm us. But what has been deliberately directed against us is a completely different story. What does this mean for our protection? It means we need to know the doorways before crossing them. It means that ignorance doesn't protect us. It only makes us vulnerable without knowing it. It means there are safe ways to relate to these dimensions, just as there are safe ways to swim in the ocean or to use fire. And it also means that if you've already crossed one of these doorways without realizing it, whether by visiting a charged location, by meeting the wrong person, by exploring practices without proper guidance, or by having your defenses weakened by life circumstances, then understanding what happened is the first step toward regaining your balance. The veil between worlds is thinner than we imagine, and once it's torn, it doesn't close automatically. The most prevalent form of psychic attack originates in the minds of other human beings. This might seem obvious at first glance, but there's a crucial distinction that most people completely overlook. Not every attack results from conscious malice. The harm can occur as accidentally as being hit by an out-of-control vehicle. And this understanding absolutely changes everything about how we should respond. When we feel like targets of negative influence, when energy seems to drain from our body without explanation, when dark thoughts invade our mind uninvited, when an oppressive presence seems to follow us wherever we go, the first impulse is to look for someone to blame. Who's doing this to me? Who wishes me harm? Who should I confront? But here's what I discovered, and it made me completely rethink my approach. Our supposed persecutor may himself be a victim. The person from whom the negative energy emanates may not have consciously originated that force. He may be just as trapped as we are, maybe even more so, serving as an involuntary channel for something he doesn't understand and doesn't control. An analogy illustrates this point well. Imagine you shake someone's hand at the exact moment that person steps on a high-voltage cable. You'll receive a severe shock. Your hands will burn. Your body will suffer the consequences. But it would be absurd to accuse that person of malice. He didn't choose to electrocute you. He himself is being electrocuted. The fact that you were affected doesn't mean there was any intention to harm you. The same principle applies to many attacks of psychic origin. Think about this for a moment. There are people who carry with them, without knowing it, dense energies accumulated over years. Unprocessed traumas ferment in the unconscious, repressed anger that never found healthy expression, fear crystallized into repetitive thought patterns, old resentments that have solidified like stones in their energy field. These energies don't stay contained in airtight compartments within the psyche. They leak, they project outward, they affect everyone around, especially those who are more sensitive or more emotionally close. A person carrying this kind of weight can contaminate an entire environment without having the slightest awareness of what they're doing. This doesn't mean deliberate attacks don't exist. They do. There are people who have learned to intentionally direct their will against others, whether through corrosive envy, calculated revenge, desire for control, or simple cruelty. But these cases represent a minority. Most of what we experience as attack is actually accidental contamination by people who suffer as much as we do. And why does this distinction matter so much? Because it completely determines our response. Responding to an attack with a counterattack represents a deeply misguided strategy, not just for ethical reasons, though those are important, but for absolutely practical reasons. When we retaliate, we lower ourselves to the level of our aggressors. We enter the same battlefield, we operate at the same dense frequencies, and we become vulnerable to the same forces we're trying to fight. Furthermore, if the aggressor is actually an unconscious victim, our counterattack can dramatically worsen the situation for both parties. We create a negative feedback loop in which the harmful energy simply amplifies, bouncing back and forth among those involved without ever dissipating. I thought about this for a long time before accepting the implications. More humanitarian and compassionate methods prove equally effective and considerably less dangerous to implement. Protection works better than retaliation. Neutralization works better than conflict. Building a shield is smarter than wielding a sword. What does protection mean in this context? It means strengthening our own energy field so that external influences don't penetrate easily. It means learning to recognize when we're being affected and knowing how to clear these influences before they take deep root. It means cultivating internal states that naturally repel incompatible energies, not through brute force, but through raising our frequency. It's like the difference between killing mosquitoes one by one and installing a screen on the window. Understanding that many attacks occur without conscious intention completely transforms our posture in these situations. Instead of paranoia and anger, we can cultivate discernment and compassion. Instead of looking for enemies, we can look for solutions. Instead of perpetuating the cycle of negativity, we can be the ones who break it. This doesn't mean naivety. Deliberate attacks exist and must be treated with absolute seriousness. But even in these cases, the most effective response is rarely direct confrontation. Those who know these dynamics well understand that light dispels darkness not by fighting against it, but simply by being what it is. Darkness has no substance of its own. It's merely the absence of light. In the same way, many negative influences completely lose their power when we simply refuse to feed them with our obsessive attention, our paralyzing fear, and our combustible anger. They depend on our emotional participation to continue existing in our field. Once that participation is withdrawn, they gradually dissipate like morning mist in the sun. True power isn't in attacking. It's about becoming unattackable. Even people who don't consider themselves sensitive can subconsciously perceive invisible forces when visiting certain places. You've probably experienced this. You walked into a house and immediately felt something was wrong without being able to explain what. You visited a historical site and were overcome by unexplainable melancholy. You walked down a hallway and felt a chill run down your spine for no apparent reason. You refused to enter a specific room, claiming discomfort you couldn't justify. Normally, we pass through subtle energies without noticing them. They permeate the entire universe in a diffuse way, like the air we breathe. We don't pay attention to air because it's everywhere at the same density. But walk into a smoke-filled room and you'll immediately notice that something has changed. The difference in concentration makes the invisible perceptible. The same thing happens with subtle forces. In certain places, the concentration becomes dense enough to affect even less receptive consciousnesses. Something touches us and stirs our being at levels that don't reach the surface of the conscious mind. We feel without knowing that we feel. We react without understanding what we're reacting to. Our body responds before our mind can formulate an explanation. This intrigued me deeply when I started investigating these phenomena. Why do certain places accumulate energy this way? There are several explanations that complement each other. Emotionally intense events leave impressions in the environment, like footprints in wet sand. The more intense the event, the deeper the impression. Repeated traumas in the same location create layer upon layer of these impressions until the space itself becomes saturated with energetic memory. Houses where there was domestic violence for generations. Prisons where suffering was constant for decades. Hospitals where pain and fear accumulated year after year. Battlefields where thousands died in agony. These places carry the weight of everything that happened in them, a burden that doesn't dissipate simply because time has passed. But it's not just negative events that mark a space. Temples and sacred sites where spiritual practices were performed for centuries also accumulate energy, of a different nature, but equally perceptible. This is why people report profound experiences in ancient cathedrals, monasteries, or pilgrimage sites. The concentration of devotional intention over the years created a field that facilitates altered states of consciousness. The space became a portal. What does this mean in practice? For some people, the barrier between consciousness and subconsciousness remains too dense to allow any clear understanding of what's happening. These individuals experience only a vague sense of oppression, a diffuse discomfort that mysteriously disappears when they change environments. They may spend years attributing this discomfort to other causes, stress, fatigue, and health problems, without ever identifying the true source. Stop and consider the implications of this. Because the real cause is never identified, these people may suffer from apparently unexplainable health problems for years on end. They consult doctors who never find an adequate diagnosis because they're looking in the wrong place. The physical body manifests symptoms, chronic fatigue that doesn't respond to rest, persistent headaches that no painkiller resolves, sleep disturbances that defy treatment, and anxiety without apparent cause that no therapy can explain, but the origin lies beyond the reach of conventional medical instruments. I've seen this happen more times than I can count. One person moves to a new house and, with no other change in their life, their chronic pain completely disappears. Another changes jobs, and their unexplainable depression dissolves like mist in the sun. A third simply rearranges the furniture in their bedroom, moving the bed away from a specific corner, and for the first time in months, manages to sleep deeply through the entire night. Recognizing the energetic influence of places opens therapeutic possibilities that materialistic medicine completely ignores. Moving to a different residence or workplace can produce cures that no medication could achieve, simply by removing the person from the zone of negative influence. It's not magic or superstition, it's elementary logic once we accept the existence of these forces. And what if you can't change your environment? There are techniques for clearing and protecting spaces. Traditions from around the world have developed methods for this over millennia. Smudging with specific herbs, use of coarse salt, consecrated water, sounds at particular frequencies, and intention directed through prayer or visualization. These methods work not because they're primitive superstition, but because they interact with the same subtle forces that cause the problem. The space you inhabit isn't neutral. It never was. It carries the memory of everything that happened there, of all the emotions that were felt within its walls. and that memory may be affecting you right now in ways your conscious mind can't perceive or name. The question we need to ask isn't whether this is possible. The question is, how much of what we feel daily is really our own, and how much are we absorbing from the environment around us without realizing it? Psychic attacks of sufficient intensity to become noticeable generally begin manifesting through characteristic dreams. Not ordinary dreams, not the normal processing of the day's experiences, something different, something that carries an unmistakable quality of invasion, of external presence, of contact with forces that don't originate in our own mind. The dreamer may experience a sensation of weight on the chest, as if someone were kneeling on them while they sleep. This weight isn't metaphorical. It can be so intense that the person wakes up, having difficulty breathing, with a racing heart and a body drenched in cold sweat. And when this sensation of physical pressure occurs, there's an important indicator. The attack probably emanates from the very location where the person is sleeping. This impressed me when I began studying these phenomena. The weight is due to the concentration of etheric substance, which different traditions call ectoplasm, prana, chi, or life energy. This substance, although subtle, has enough density to produce measurable physical effects. Physicist W.J. Crawford conducted extensive research with the Gallagher Circle in Belfast in the early 20th century, documenting that this substance could be photographed, weighed, and recorded on precision instruments. In Paris, similar experiments were conducted with the medium Eva C., corroborating Crawford's findings. But dreams are just the beginning. A sensation of fear and oppression constitutes another highly characteristic sign, often foreshadowing imminent attacks. It's very rare for an attack to erupt in a completely unexpected manner. A hidden influence casts its shadow on consciousness before becoming evident. We perceive subconsciously before we understand consciously. Do you know this feeling? That moment when something seems wrong, but you can't identify what? An anxiety that arises from nowhere, a premonition that something bad is about to happen, a restlessness that finds no object. These apparently irrational emotional states may be the first signs that something is penetrating your defenses. This shadow line indicates gradual penetration through what we might call the subconscious sensor, that part of our mind that filters information from the subtle world, protecting our waking consciousness from overload. When an external force begins to cross this filter, we first feel emotional discomfort. Clarity about the nature of the problem comes later, if it comes at all. As the attack progresses, nervous exhaustion intensifies progressively. Think about this for a moment. The body is fighting against something it can't identify. The nervous system is in a constant state of alert, responding to an invisible threat. Defense mechanisms operate at maximum capacity, burning energy without the person understanding why. The result is fatigue disproportionate to the physical effort made. In extreme cases, there can be such debilitation of tissues that the victim becomes a mere bloodless shell, confined to bed, too weak to move. And yet, and here's the crucial point, no definite disease can be detected by conventional medical tests. The blood comes back normal, the organs function, the images show no abnormalities. Everything looks fine on paper, but the person is clearly wasting away. This type of situation leads to despair. Doctors find no explanation. Family members begin to doubt the reality of the suffering. The victim herself questions her sanity. Meanwhile, the force causing the deterioration continues operating, invisible to the instruments that should detect it. When the person's resistance remains strong, the attack may not be able to establish a foothold in the physical plane. In these cases, it limits itself to that intermediate region between matter and mind that we perceive on the threshold of sleep. It's a terrifying experience. The victim fears going to sleep. She knows that when she closes her eyes, the nightmares will come. She knows the weight on her chest will return. She knows she'll wake up more exhausted than when she lay down, but she can't stay awake indefinitely. The body demands rest. And so she oscillates between the terror of sleeping and the impossibility of not sleeping, progressively exhausting herself. This specific pattern, fear of sleeping combined with increasing exhaustion, combined with normal medical tests, should set off a red flag. Not in all cases, naturally. There are medical and psychological conditions that can produce similar symptoms. But when conventional medicine finds no answers and the symptoms persist or worsen, it's time to consider possibilities that scientific instruments can't measure. Nervous exhaustion and mental collapse are the most common results of prolonged psychic attacks. In rare and extreme cases, when the victim finds no help and the attack continues without interruption, the outcome can be even more serious. There are documented reports of people who simply died, not from any identifiable disease, but apparently from sheer accumulated terror. Recognizing the symptoms is the first step towards seeking the right solutions. So far, we've talked about internal experiences, sensations, dreams, and emotional states. Now we enter a different territory. Concentrated psychic attacks produce manifestations that any observer present can witness, whether sensitive or not. This completely changes the picture. When we talk about sensations of fear, weight on the chest, or unexplainable exhaustion, there's always the possibility that only the affected person perceives them. But when physical phenomena occur, phenomena that other people can see, photograph, and touch, the nature of the evidence is transformed. The phenomenon of repercussion demonstrates how experiences in the subtle body are reflected in the dense physical body. After astral combats during sleep, bruises appear on the physical body, sometimes displaying defined and recognizable patterns. I'm not talking about vague marks that could be anything. I'm talking about specific, unmistakable shapes. This left me speechless when I saw the reports for the first time. Documented testimonies include goat hoof marks imprinted on the skin as distinct bruises. Playing card symbols, like the Ace of Clubs, appear on the body with no apparent physical cause. These bruises follow the normal healing process. They evolve from blue to yellow before disappearing completely after a few days. The progression is identical to that of any common contusion. The difference lies in the origin, an origin our eyes can't see, but whose effects are unmistakable. Foul odors constitute another common manifestation of astral attacks. The characteristic smell resembles decomposing flesh. It appears and disappears capriciously, with no relation to any identifiable physical source. You can search the entire house looking for a dead mouse or spoiled food and find absolutely nothing. While the odor manifests, anyone in the environment can clearly smell it. It's not the perception of a single person. It's a phenomenon that everyone present shares. Incorrectly performed rituals can produce intense sewage odors. The connection between the subtle plane and certain sensory manifestations in the physical plane is more direct than we normally imagine. The precipitation of slime represents an even stranger phenomenon. Viscous stains appear on surfaces with no apparent explanation. Trails resembling slugs marching in formation appear where no slugs exist. Giant footprints of enormous size materialize out of nowhere. In one documented case, marks resembling elephant footprints appeared on the floor of a living room, enormous tracks that led nowhere and came from nowhere. Bizarre footprints that appear from nowhere and lead nowhere are occasionally observed when there's snow. A single line of marks beginning abruptly in the middle of a roof, crossing in a straight line and ending at a wall with no return, as if the walker had descended from the sky and disappeared through the masonry. Stop and absorb this. The astral bell manifests as a sound varying from a clear bell-like note to an indistinct click. This sound often announces the arrival of entities barely capable of full manifestation. It's like a knock on the door between worlds, someone on the other side signaling their presence before managing to cross completely. Unexplainable explosions of fire are sometimes observed. Poltergeist phenomena, scattered objects, bells ringing by themselves, and noisy manifestations of all sorts complete the picture of objective signs that can confirm diagnoses of psychic attack. Naturally, discernment is required. The possibility of a material explanation should be considered before concluding that we're dealing with a manifestation from the subtle plane. Looking for physical causes is part of the responsible investigation process. On the other hand, when all conventional explanations have been exhausted and the phenomena persist, denying the reality of what's happening would be as irresponsible as accepting it without examination. If working with the understanding of psychic attack allows us to elucidate a case that resisted all other approaches, we have considerable confirmation of the diagnosis. What should we do with this understanding? All change begins with the recognition that we are more than physical bodies operating in a purely material universe. We are spiritual beings, and the way to access our deeper nature, to connect with the intelligence that organizes the cosmos, is through expanded states of consciousness. Meditation offers this portal. It's also our greatest protection. We developed audio tools specifically designed to help you access elevated states of consciousness. Calibrated frequencies that prepare your mind to function the way it was designed to function. A receiver tuned to the subtler dimensions of reality and simultaneously protected against unwanted influences. To discover how to activate this portal and get immediate access, click the link on the screen or in the comments. If this video resonated with you, write in the comments. It made sense to me.